If somebody says don't film you, then film. You can go and film somewhere else.
Well, we're back at the Criterium du Dauphine and I've just been removed from the Ineos camp. I am allowed to stand next to these bikes, but I'm not allowed to stand next to the ones over there, which I guess means they've got a new one. So let's go and try and get some shots.
Taking enough photos now.
So this one is the old Dogma F, and as you can see, it's quite bulky around the bottom bracket area, but the new one is even more so. In fact, it looks quite like the Aero Orbea.
Yeah, you've been told not to film.
Yeah, muy bien.
The old bike. Yeah, you've been told don't film. Somebody told you not to film, no? Yeah, somebody said don't film. This morning. Somebody from if somebody says don't film you, then film. You can go and film somewhere else.
Okay, well, I don't know if Ineos will let me film this bush or not, but let's try that again, shall we? So, the new bike, well, let's go somewhere else and talk about it properly. Well, despite the efforts of the new bike police, we did manage to get some shots of the mysterious new Ineos bike, and it did then spend the next 4 hours on the TV cameras. Since then, we've had a little bit more time to go through the pictures and compare them to the old bike. Now, it certainly looks like Pinarello has gone after aerodynamic gains with the changes that they've made. I think it's also fair to say that this is an evolution of the Dogma line, rather than a complete overhaul, as there are still quite a few bits which remain similar to the outgoing bike. First up, the head tube, as this is arguably the biggest change compared to the old version. It's definitely the easiest way of telling the two apart anyway. The new model is much deeper in this area, and this is a trend that we've seen throughout the peloton. The longer the head tube, the longer the air can stay attached to the bike, and supposedly that is then less draggy. This is hardly new information, but we're only seeing it appearing on bikes now because the previous generation of bikes were governed by stricter UCI rules. I think it's interesting that Pinarello has opted to add this material behind the steerer tube though, rather than in front. That's the opposite of what we've seen on the Tarmac S8 and 3T Strada. And in fact, Pinarello were one of the first to use this kind of nose cone design, something that they now appear to have ditched. As we touched on a minute ago, the next big change is around the bottom bracket area. It looks much beefier than before, and again, this is an area where the UCI has relaxed its rules since the Dogma F was introduced just before the Tour de France in 2021. That was 3 years ago. Bike manufacturers usually put extra material in this area to improve stiffness, but we'll have to wait for the official release to see what claims Pinarello comes out with. One thing that is almost certain is that Pinarello will be sticking with the one bike for all occasions mantra, whereas the likes of Cervelo and Trek, until yesterday, have favoured having both a climbing race bike and an aero race bike in their lineup. Since the Sky days, the now Ineos team have always had this one bike for everything approach, and we can't really see any reason why they'd be moving away from that now. Let us know if you disagree though in the comments section below. There are of course plenty of familiar features too. Some watchers will be relieved to see that the distinctive on the curve, this funny wave in the fork and seat stays remains. The down tube follows a similar shape, although it might be slightly thinner, and we reckon this could be to try and keep the weight down with the material being added elsewhere. These tabs behind the fork dropouts designed to reduce turbulence are still there too. The profile of the seat tube around the rear wheel also looks pretty similar, although we wouldn't mind betting that the seat tube and seat post are narrower than before. Again, this is something that the UCI has changed the rules on, so seems like an easy aero win. On the whole, the new Dogma F, we'll call it that because there is still an F on the seat tube, looks to have tubing with what Pinarello calls its flat back shaping. In other words, the profiles are truncated aerofoils or camtail that are cut off at the back. We'll also pop a shot of the rear of both the bikes on the screen to see whether you reckon the seat stays join the seat tube any lower. We're still undecided. The existing top-level Pinarello Dogma has clearance for 28mm tyres. Ineos had thrown their toys out the pram before we managed to get a proper look at the clearance on the new one, but we wouldn't mind betting that it's increased. Some pros are now racing on 30mm tyres, and 32mm of clearance on a race bike isn't uncommon these days. When the Dogma F was released, Pinarello said that it was 865 grams for the frame, 9% lighter than its predecessor, the F12. Pinarello also claimed that it was 12% stiffer around the bottom bracket, and the disc brake version was said to be 4.8% more aerodynamic. What do you think they'll claim this time? Let us know in the comments below. So that's the new Dogma. Let us know what you think of it down below and whether you think more aero was the way to go. As always, if you enjoyed this content, then please give it a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see all the other new bikes that we saw at the Dauphiné. Luckily, not all the teams were as protective, and we'll see you next time.